What started on the drawing board became a trophy. Engineers at Federal Premium Ammunition designed the trophy-bonded tip bullet to deliver devastating, bone-crushing performance. With a translucent polymer tip and boat tail design, Trophy Tip provides flatter trajectories and improved accuracy. Plus, a solid copper shank jacket and bonded core mean high weight retention and deep penetration. Trophy Bonded Tip from Federal Premium Ammunition. Claim your trophy.
Hi everybody, Dan Schmidt here with Deer and Deer Hunting and deeranddeerhunting.com. Welcome to the new Deer Talk Now. We've listened to what you had to say over the years. We're going to make the show shorter. It's going to be more concise and packed with information to make you a better deer hunter and know more about deer. So let's get the show started with some tips you can use this spring when managing your land for whitetails. You know, we talk about food plots all the time for wildlife, and rightly so. It's a great way to attract wildlife to your property and provide them with the nutrition they need. But have you ever thought about a fruit plot? That's right. An orchard like this can be a fabulous thing to provide on your land for deer, turkeys, and any other wildlife that you're going to come across. A few things you need to understand before running out and buying trees and digging holes is you need to know, you have to map it out. You need to have a plan on how you're going to do this on your property so you get the most benefit from those trees and those trees actually survive to maturity, which is going to be your ultimate goal. The first thing you want to do is look at your property and see how that land lays. And you want to pick out a spot with the best sun exposure and the best protection from the elements. Fruit trees can be touchy. They can be hard to get established, and once they get established, usually it's not that big of a deal, but you need to think about a few things. Number one, wind exposure. Number two, any kind of microclimate that might exist on that property. A frost pocket, for example, a low dip in the terrain can affect by several degrees how that tree is going to survive in wintertime. Frost is going to heave up, it can kill the tree, especially some of your softer fruits like plums and pears and cherries and things like that, that they can't take a lot of that really nasty northern weather that we get sometimes. In the south, not so much of an issue, but you want to pick out a spot. This orchard that I'm standing in is on a south-facing slope, perfect location for an orchard, a lot of sun exposure. It's getting sun from the east all the way when the sun sets in the west, almost 100% sunlight during the day. That's ideal for growing apple trees, plum trees, whatever we want to get out here. The fun begins when you get to actually pick out your trees. But before you pick out your trees, decide what you want. Do you want apples? Do you want pears? Do you want plums? Do you want cherries? You're probably going to want a mix of just about anything that can grow on your property. Look at a climate map, see what's going to grow best in your area, and then err towards the side of caution. If you live in the north, you're going to want cold, hardy trees. If you live in the south, you have a lot more options, a lot more fruit you can plant. The other thing you need to keep in mind, if you're planting, let's say you want to plant an apple orchard, you're going to need to have several strains of apples, different varieties, so they're going to pollinate correctly and you're going to get the maximum amount of fruit. Don't go out and plant all the same type of tree. That's a mistake. Some trees are self-pollinating. Yes, this is true, but a variety is what you're going to want. The other thing you want to keep in mind is trees will bear at different times of the year. So this is really where the fun begins, because you can pick trees that are going to bear in late August, early September, mid-September, early October, all the way into November. So you're going to have a never-ending supply of fruit for the deer, and it's going to last you through most of hunting season. There are three other things you need to keep in mind when buying trees, is they come in different sizes. There's standard trees, there's semi-dwarfs, and there's dwarfs. Standard trees are those old apple trees you see on a lot of old farmsteads. The big apple trees, they get gnarly, they get old, they produce a lot of fruit, but they take a long time to grow. The basic standard tree is going to grow really high. It could grow 30 feet high or higher, but it's going to take you 7, 8 years, maybe even more, for that tree to become mature enough to start really bearing fruit. It's a long time to wait. Semi-dwarf trees, that's what I prefer. Semi-dwarf trees, for the most part, are going to grow about 20 feet high, not super high, and they're going to bear a lot earlier. A lot of these trees, if you get them 3-4 year transplants, they're going to bear within the first year or two after you plant them. Dwarfs are going to grow a lot faster, they're going to produce a lot quicker, but they're small trees, they're short, they're 7-8 foot trees. You don't want those. The deer are going to come in there and browse them. They're going to kill those trees before you're going to even have much benefit from those trees. So those are the 3 types of trees you can get. The other thing you need to keep in mind is when buying trees, you can buy bare root stock, which is really cheap. You can get a lot of trees for not a lot of money, but they are what they sound like. They're bare root trees, they're wrapped in burlap, you get them, they look like little sticks and you stick them in the ground and you gotta take a lot of care to get those things going. It's economical to do that, but it takes a lot of work. What I prefer is scale it back. Don't think about the quantity of trees, think about the quality of trees. Get yourself some container stock. A little bit more expensive. These trees can be $30, $40, $50, $60 or more per tree, but they're gonna come in a nice big pot. They're gonna have a well-developed root base. You're gonna get that tree in the ground. You're gonna be 2 or 3 years down the road from where you would have been had you planted a bare root tree. Once you have your trees in the ground, now's when the work begins, and that's gonna require regular maintenance. It's not a lot of work, it's just something that you're gonna have to keep doing month after month, year after year, especially those first few years those trees are in the ground to keep them strong and growing healthy. The first thing you wanna do is make sure they get enough water. If you can do that, get them about 10 gallons of water per tree every 10 days in the summertime. If you can't do that, it's just something that's gonna be, and you're hoping those trees are gonna grow. But if you can get them water, it's critical that you get them water in July and August. That's when those trees are growing, especially that first year that you have them in the ground. After you get them past that first year, your success of those trees surviving increases greatly. Then, after you have the trees in the ground, you get to your first winter, you get out of winter, you're approaching spring. Spring's here, the frost just got out of the ground 2 weeks ago. That's when you want to trim these trees. You can trim them in winter. I recommend waiting until the end of winter, not to put more stress on those trees. They are dormant in the winter, but it's still going to be stress. The other thing you need to keep in mind is when you're trimming a tree and you're going to take off some of these branches, don't take off more than 25% of those branches on any given tree. If you do more than that, that tree is going to go into a shock mode. Once it starts growing, it's going to put all of its energy into new shoots and new leaves, and it's going to stress that tree out. 25% or less, and if you have a tree that kind of got out of hand on you, just go year by year, do a little bit more until that tree's in a nice healthy shape. The tools, we only need a few tools. We have a hand lopper. That's for cutting off some limbs, smaller limbs and branches. We have a it's a ratchet pruner. I really like this one. That's especially when those trees are small and that's sharp. You can just get right in there, snap those little twigs off cleanly, and that's a good thing to have. You get your bigger limbs, you're gonna want a sharp handsaw. Get yourself one of these brand new and only use it for your orchard. Do not use a dull one. A dull one's gonna tear that bark. It's a chance of wounding that tree and getting that tree infected. We have our knife for cutting some rope. We have a rubber mallet for pounding in some stakes. I'm gonna show you what we're gonna do with that. We have some twist ties. I'm also gonna show you what we're gonna do with that. And we have some tree dressing, very cheap. Consider it like a Band-Aid. It's a tar-like substance that when you cut off a limb on a tree, you paint that over the wound. It's gonna heal up quickly, and the tree's gonna recover a lot faster. To trim any fruit tree, you wanna start at the bottom of the tree, work your way up, and then come back down again. Let me start from the bottom. What we're gonna do is we're gonna look at the tree, and we want 6 to 8, no more than that, good scaffolding branches. Those are the branches that are coming off the sides of the tree, working their way up the tree. That's what's gonna hold the fruit when this tree gets to be mature. What you wanna do is you do not want the limbs stacked on top of each other, so you don't want one limb here and then one limb right below it. If that happens, the fruit, the leaves are gonna hang down on that other branch. That other branch isn't gonna get enough sunlight. So we're gonna try to have those kind of going off in different directions all the way up the tree. And the other thing that you want is you want it spaced out evenly up the tree. You don't want it too top heavy, you don't want it too bottom heavy. So allow enough of those scaffolding branches evenly up the tree, and you're gonna be well on your way to having a really nice tree. Once we've decided which scaffolding branches we're gonna keep, the last thing we need to do is train those branches. What I mean by training is we're gonna take this branch, you'll see those branches naturally wanna grow up towards the sunlight, they wanna reach up towards the sky. We wanna have them more horizontal. We wanna have them almost horizontal to the ground like that. So what we're gonna do is take this limb, and we're just gonna basically put a stake in the ground and train it. We're gonna tie it down to make it grow that way, and it will grow that way. It's gonna allow a lot more sunlight to come into this tree. A couple tricks you're gonna wanna keep in mind when doing this. You can use rope, I've used rope. You can use the straps you get at the store. There's rubber bands, all sorts of stuff. Pretty simple. Well, first thing I'm gonna do, You can buy stakes or you can make your own, and I just made this out of a piece of hardwood. I just cut it, and that's what's going to happen a lot of times if you're doing this by the woods. But I'm going to take it away from the drip line, which is important. I'm going to keep it away from the main roots of the tree. I'm just going to find a spot. I'm going to pound that stake into the ground just enough. That should do it, just enough to keep that, especially this branch here is young, to keep it staked down. Then what I'm going to do, today I decided to use some twist ties, which is much easier. I can use rope, I can use rubber tubes, there's a lot of things you can use. Twist ties work fine. What I'm going to do here, the key is I'm going to take that twist tie and I'm going to put it around the limb and just make a loop about like, you know, a little bit smaller than that. So it's not binding down on that limb. I don't want anything to dig into that limb. The limb can still move freely. If that digs into the limb, it's going to grow into the limb and it's going to kill that limb, and you don't want that to happen. So the first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to put that around the limb. It's good enough. That's going to work right there. And then just for a little bit of extra precaution, I'm just going to take a piece of electrical tape. I'm going to put it down, just wrap it around here, just so that twist tie doesn't tighten up all the way over the course of the summer. You know, wind, storms can shake that limb around and affect it that way. So I just do that to keep that from pinching down on the limb. Then I'm just going to take a piece of string, a piece of rope, tie it to that loop. I'm going to allow this to pull the limb down to where I want it. And I'm just going to wrap that around the stake. See how that's going right there? It's good. So I'm just going to wrap that around and tie it off. It looks like my stake's coming out of the ground a little bit, so I'm going to pound that down a little bit more. So that's down. I'm just going to come back in here. That's all you need to do. You're going to see what it did to that limb. That's bringing that limb horizontal to the ground. This is going to get a lot more little offshoots on it. We're going to trim some of those up here. The key to remember here is when you're trimming one of these little offshoots, you don't want to cut the whole thing off, because all these little buds, those are going to be apple blossoms in the spring here. So if like this one here is pretty long, we're just going to come down here, we're going to cut that about halfway off, right above one of the buds. So it's going to give us 1, 2, 3, it's going to give us 6 buds there. Could be literally 6 apples on that little stem right here this summer. That's it. You're just going to go up the tree. You're going to do that around the tree and train the branches that you can train. You get really high, you don't have to do that. The ones on the bottom are going to make a nice base. You're going to have a great tree. Okay, so we found our spot. We found a nice southern facing slope. We got our orchard in here. The next question you have to ask yourself, am I going to hunt over this plot, or is it going to be a destination plot? I would recommend, yes, you would like to have a good spot where you could have a stand or a blind and it's right in shooting range of that orchard, but I would recommend putting that orchard in the best spot for the orchard, where the trees can grow and be healthy. I'm not too much worried about where the deer are going to come from. They're going to find it, believe me. Once those trees are mature and they start bearing fruit, deer, turkeys, everything's going to find this orchard. I can figure out how to hunt it later. You do everything right, you're going to have something like this, a beautiful, mature orchard to hunt over and see a lot of game. You see, these trees are laid out perfectly. They're 10, 15 years old, perfect sun exposure, right next to the woods, right next to a nice corn food plot here. But the best thing that we got going on here is we got food, we got soft mass, and we're gonna get up here, we got the bedding area right here. That's the best of both worlds when laying out any kind of food plot or fruit plot. Well, hopefully you learned a few tips today to learn how to make your land more attractive to whitetails. Check back to deeranddeerhunting.com for more shows in the coming weeks.
What started on the drawing board became a trophy. engineers at Federal Premium Ammunition designed the trophy bonded tip bullet to deliver devastating bone-crushing performance. With a translucent polymer tip and boat-tail design, Trophy Tip provides flatter trajectories and improved accuracy. Plus, a solid copper shank jacket and bonded core mean high weight retention and deep penetration. Trophy bonded tip from Federal Premium Ammunition. Claim your trophy.